Hello, you are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Real Impartation Moment on Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Okwan. Today's section, I want to quickly run with you, histology of the liver and also touching on what you call the lobular system of the liver. So please, if you've not watched, my previous videos on the gross aspect of the liver, yes, to really understand what we are doing, it's better you go for those videos and we watch. So you see how, yes, because this liver is a solid organ, how, of course, the functional parenchyma will be organized and how it deviates from other solid organs. You see that. And one other thing too is that you look at how these lobes, of the liver, are classified. Of course, anatomically, we see the classic lobe that we have, being hexagonal in shape. But of course, we look at the other classifications regarding how the bile, is drained and all that. As well as, of course, looking at the various relative blood supply to the various hepatocytes, relative to, of course, what we call the portal, area. And so, without much ado, let's set the ball rolling, looking at the liver histology briefly, as well as, of course, the lobular system of the liver. So there we are. Now, this is a slide showing you the liver, low power magnification. Now, one thing that we have to know is that the liver is a solid organ. That's the first thing. And because this is a solid organ, yes, solid organs will have what we call connective tissue capsule surrounding them. They will have connective tissue capsule. And one thing that we know is that capsule is made up of dense, irregular connective tissue. And so you can see a lot of collagenous fibers, running through this, liver specimen that is shown over here. A lot of thick collagenous fibers. So it's less cellular, that's what we are saying. But one other thing too that we realize is that because this liver is an intraperitoneal structure except its bare area, so it is only the bare area that we are going to find only the capsule. But what we call the other areas which are covered by this kind of simple squamous epithelium, because they are serous, it's going to be intraperitoneal. So all other areas should have what we call simple, squamous epithelium surrounding it, lining the outermost, because they are intraperitoneal. But their area which is, devoid of peritoneum is the bare area of the liver. So what we are seeing, you can see the connective tissue capsule, which is dense, irregular connective tissue. That is what we find with the liver. Now, one other thing too that we know is that by principle, whenever I have connective tissues, what they do is that they invade, into the substance of that solid organ. So there's the invasion. You can see the connective tissue still running through it. So when they invade the substance of that solid organ, then they are going to compartmentalize these, organs. Now, one thing that I always say is that whenever these connective tissue, they invaginate the solid substance of the solid organ, they divide that solid organ into lobes, and of course, eventually, smaller divisions of the lobes being lobes. Now, for the liver, grossly, you can see the lobes by way of the, larger or the largest right lobe, yes, followed by, of course, the left lobe, of course, quadrate lobe, and of course, caudate lobes. Those ones are grossly discernible. You can see them with your naked eye. Now, those ones that you can see coming from this connective capsule that you can see, they represent what we call the lobes of the liver. So, the lobes of the liver are those hexagonal shaped structures, which we find in what we call the functional parenchyma, that general organization that we find, that uniform organization. So wherever I cut, I'll see these lobes. Which area of the liver that I cut, I'll see a uniform arrangement, of that functional parenchyma into these, lobes. I'll show you these lobes. And these lobes, classically, they bear a central, blood vessel, which of course we call a central vein. Then alongside at the edges of these hexagonal shape, that boundaries, you have what we call the portal areas. I'll show you these ones. So what I'm saying is that by principle, because the liver is a solid organ, it will have a capsule, and capsule is made up of dense, irregular connective, very thick collagenous fibers running in different directions. Few cells present. Then the next one is that because the liver is an intraperitoneal structure, then outside this capsule, I should see simple squamous epithelium lining it. Except its bare area is the bare area which is devoid of the simple squamous epithelial line I'm talking about. And we are saying that this capsule, where dense irregular connective tissue, will invade the substance of the solid organ, to divide it into lobes and lobes. I've told you that for the liver, the lobes are grossly discernible. You can see them with your naked eye by way of the right lobe, the left lobe, the quadrate lobe, and the caudate lobes, okay, of the liver. But those ones we can only see, okay, with either light microscopy or electron microscopy. That is what we call the lobes of the liver, because we said that the connective tissue invagination will go through the substance of solid organs, dividing them into what we call lobes and lobules. Okay, so that is what we are going to see. And one thing that we know is that we are going to see that these lobules will be relatively roughly hexagonal in shape, and of course radiating towards the central vein. Yes, we have what we call hepatocyte, okay, radiating in that manner. And these ones, these irregularly oriented hepatocytes, that is what we call plates of hepatocytes. Okay, so that is what you have to know. We will see all these things. But one thing I want to show you is that this connective tissue running through it, okay, we call these ones septa. If they are very prominent, but if they are less prominent, we call them trabeculae. Now in the liver, you may see both septa, septi and trabeculae, okay, in what we call this kind of connective tissue that will be running through them. Okay, so that is what I want you to know over here. Now, as I said, as a solid organ, one thing that we find is that it is not having cortex and medulla, but one thing is that there's uniform arrangement of what we call the structure. Whichever area of the liver I cut, I'll see uniform arrangement. Okay, so these are the roughly hexagonal shaped structures that we find over here. And that connective tissue that I showed you, which will be running in between the lobules, okay, forming the septa, it's essentially made up of that kind of having a lot of collagenous fibers. Yes, not only that, it will also be having what we call reticular fibers. Now, for me to see reticular fiber, then I have to go through this kind of special staining technique that I have to go through. That is silver impregnation technique. And in silver impregnation technique, we are using salts of silver. And what is happening is that the oxidative state, that's Ag plus ion, okay, of the silver, okay, in that salt will be reduced by these reticular fibers. You know that reticular fibers are a type 3 collagen fibers that we're talking about. Okay, those ones they are agaripheric. They're able to reduce that kind of silver ion to become metallic silver, giving that kind of dark appearance. Okay, but that is not what we are looking over here, but we are saying that that's the connective tissue, okay, running through it. Now, one thing that you have to know, okay, is that if I take the lobule of the liver, okay, then it's going to bear what we call a central vein. So there will be a central vein, and yes, we are saying is like roughly hexagonal at those sides of the of this structure. We find what we call the portal area. We have what we call the portal area. Okay, the portal areas will be at those sides of this lobule that we're talking about. Okay, so that is one thing that you have to know. And then we are going to see these hepatocytes running okay towards what we call the central vein. Okay, so I'll show you these portal triads that I'm talking about. Now, this lobule that we are talking about represent what we call the classic lobule of the liver. So that one is morphological, that one is anatomical. That is what we see. And whenever we talk about the classic type of lobule, because the first one that was identified, we are called the classic. That is the classic hepatic lobule we are talking about, and that one will tell us how blood will flow from all the way from what we call the that interlobular branch of what we call the hepatic artery proper, as well as of course the interlobular branch of hepatic portal vein. Yes, draining all the way towards what we call the central vein. But before they get to the central vein, now these radiating plates of hepatocytes, that you find all over here, you can see there are some spaces in between them. Those spaces represent what we call the sinusoids, of the liver. Yes, the liver is having this kind of discontinuous capillaries. I'll show you in another picture, magnify, show that you can appreciate that one. These sinusoids, represent that area where, of course, that kind of oxygen-rich blood by way of this interlobular branch, of what we call the hepatic artery proper, as well as of course interlobular branch of what we call the hepatic portal vein, will be mixing. And when they mix, eventually they will get drained into what we call the central vein. So that describes what we call the classic lobule of the liver. Now, the reason why I'm calling these blood vessels interlobular branches is that they are running. There's one lobule, there's another lobule, there's another lobule. So these blood neurovasculature, these blood vessels, they are running, in between these lobules, in the connective receptor or trabeculae. So that is what I'm trying to tell you. So we call them interlobular, branches. So that is what I'm trying to show you now. Because blood vessels, we know that, I mean, they will be lined by simple squamous epithelium, forming that kind of endothelium. Okay, the hepatic artery proper, if you take a closer look, you can see that it is made up of, I mean, that kind of simple squamous epithelium, okay, having its endothelium, and of course fewer smooth muscles will also be running alongside. Yes, the hepatic portal vein. Now, one thing that you know is that I've said this in most videos of the liver that I've done, that the hepatic artery proper, yes, is supplying the liver, okay, with what we call oxygen-rich blood. Okay, oxygen-rich blood. That's about 20 to 25% of what you call the, I mean, blood requirement of the liver is supplied by what you call the hepatic artery proper. Okay, then the other, 75 to 80% is actually nutrient-rich. Okay, that nutrient-rich blood is coming from what we call the portal vein. But what I'm saying is that conveniently we have to call these structures. We don't just say hepatic artery, but you say it is the interlobular branch of what we call the hepatic artery proper. Okay, then of course this vein, which we are calling portal vein, it should be what we call lobular branch of what we call the, I mean, hepatic portal vein. Okay, you can see that that one is also lined by simple squamous epithelium, having relatively wider lumen, okay, compared to that of hepatic artery proper. Okay, this one, because an arteriole, yes, it is quite circular. This one, is a bit collapsed, so to speak, and it's larger compared to that of the artery. But alongside that, we also have these cuboidal shaped, okay, running through it. Okay, these ones represent what we call the bile duct. But remember, where the bile duct located? It's located in between these lobules, and therefore we call them what? Interlobular bile duct. But where are they located? In the liver. That is why we preferably want to call them interlobular hepatic bile duct. Interlobular hepatic bile duct. Okay, that is what I want you to know. Now, one thing that you see, that you can see that these, I mean, hepatocytes, okay, radiating hepatocytes in each lobule, okay, you can see they are relatively cuboidal in nature, okay, having this kind of eosinophilic cytoplasm, okay, very nice. But one thing is that in situations where we see a lot of whitish, pale stained regions, okay, then it tells you that the cytoplasm is filled with a lot of fat, okay, and that is what we call steatosis, okay, in this case we call it hepatic steatosis, okay. So that is, I mean, what I want you to actually know. Then I've told you that running in between these plates, these radiating plates of hepatocyte, we are going to have these discontinuous blood vessels called, sinusoids, okay, of the liver. These plates can also be called cores of the liver, okay. So that is, I mean, what I want you to know. And I said that these sinusoids represent where there's going to be mixture, okay, of what we call the, I mean, nutrient-rich blood and of course oxygen-rich blood, eventually draining all the way into what we call the central, vein of the liver. Okay, so that is, I mean, what I want you to know here. So now I've been talking about sinusoids. I've been talking about sinusoids. So what are these sinusoids I'm talking about? These sinusoids, they are that kind of discontinuous capillary that we have. Yes, because they are capillaries, then of course it makes sense that they will be lined by what we call endothelial cells. And endothelial cells are nothing but these simple squamous epithelial cells that we find over here. Is that okay? Now it's written, yes, so that we can allow for that kind of exchange of materials around over here. Now, instead of having a basal lamina, interestingly, this one, which of course we know that most of these discontinuous capillaries may have that kind of discontinuous, basement membrane, but this one essentially it may not be present at all. Okay, this kind of, I mean, basal lamina, yes, may not be present. Yes, may not be supported by this basal lamina. Okay, but the only thing is that you may have what we call titrate collagen, which I told you that is what we call the, I mean, the reticular fibers, surrounding this area. Okay, although we can't see that one over here. Okay, now one thing that I want to show you over here is that, these hepatocytes, which I said they are cuboidal in nature, what happens is that they bear what we call microvillous processes. Okay, to give them large surface area. Okay, if you have these microvillous processes around, and there's that potential space, okay, between, of course, these plasma membranes forming that kind of microvillous processes, and of course that kind of, I mean, what do you call it, the endothelial cells of what we call the the sinusoids. That potential space is what we call the perisinusoidal space. So peri, yes, means around, is around the sinusoid, so perisinusoidal, space. Otherwise having an eponym known as space of Dicey. And guys, this perisinusoidal space, okay, what it's going to do is that, I mean, it will help, you know, materials from the sinusoids, okay, and of course the, I mean, hepatocyte to first, they have to first come in over here, anything, yes, to that exchange region, okay, perisinusoidal space. And one important thing that we find over here in the perisinusoidal space is this star-shaped cell, this tail-shaped cell that we find over here, and that one, okay, is, I mean, given an eponym known as ITO cell, you know, someone's name, so ITO cells. And ITO cells, one important thing that we've learned about the liver is that it stores what we call fat-soluble vitamins. And one of those fat-soluble vitamins, yes, being vitamin A, is stored by these tail-shaped cells, okay, which we are calling them ITO cells. Okay, so that is, I mean, an important thing that I want you to actually know. So one thing that you have to know about these ones is that, I mean, there could be several insults, like taking in alcohol, like all those xenobiotics, like some drugs, okay, that you may be taking. Okay, what will happen is that they may, I mean, transform these tail-shaped cells, okay, so that they become fibrotic, okay, and that one may lead to, I mean, something that we call, you know, cirrhosis of the liver. But not only these tail-shaped cells, but also even the hepatocytes. Hepatocytes may be transformed, as well as even these endothelial cells, okay, and they may become what we call, I mean, fibrotic, okay, and that one, yes, it will lead to what we call the cirrhosis of the liver. Okay, so that is, I mean, what you have to, I mean, know, especially with these endothelial cells, alongside, of course, you know, these, I mean, hepatocytes. So if you are taking a lot of alcohol and all that, yes, then you have to be thinking of your liver. Okay, so that is that one for you. Now, apart from that, there's another space, okay, that potential space that is around the portal areas. Okay, we said that portal areas are containing, you know, these kind of interlobular branches of hepatic artery proper, okay, that of, you know, hepatic portal vein, and of course that of the bile ducts, okay, interlobular hepatic bile ducts. Okay, that is, I mean, what I want you to know. Okay, so that is the portal, you know, space. Now I want to show you something before I come to this periportal space. Okay, one thing I want to show you is that this interlobular bile duct, okay, what it is doing is that one will be draining the liver of bile, will be taking the bile away. Now that is why you have to know the pathway of flow of bile. Okay, I'll show you when we get to the portal lobe, but I want to show you now that this kind of, these bile ducts, okay, that we find over here, what they are going to do is that they are going to receive blood, okay, in the direction opposite to, you know, blood supply to the hepatocyte. So while blood supply to the hepatocyte is going, okay, in this manner, okay, from the portal areas towards the central vein, okay, bile is drained, okay, from this, I mean, leads liver cells towards the portal area into what we call the bile duct, these interlobular hepatic bile ducts. Okay, that is, I mean, what we are saying. And that one, you have to know the bile flow. Yes, the first, I mean, site, the source of production of bile being what we call hepatocytes, and in between adjacent hepatocytes there are some smaller canals, the channels known as what, I mean, bile canaliculi, and then from bile canaliculi, yes, eventually they will get to what we call, I mean, canals of Henry. I'll show you that. And then of course from canals of Henry, yes, I mean, we go to what we call these kind of interlobular hepatic bile ducts. And of course from interlobular hepatic bile duct, if it's coming from the right lobe of the liver, they will drain into what we call the right hepatic duct. If it's coming from the left lobe, alongside the accessory lobe by way of the quadrate lobe and the caudate lobes, they will be draining into what we call, I mean, left hepatic duct. Then of course they will join with the what we call the common, I mean, hepatic bile duct. And then from common hepatic duct or common hepatic bile duct, yes, into what we call cystic duct, into gallbladder, for, of course, for that kind of storage. And during the storage, of course, we know that there is going to be that kind of concentration of the bile, and under the influence of cholecystokinin, yes, the smooth muscles of the gallbladder will contract. So whenever you take in fat-rich diets, a lot of the cholecystokinin is released, so that it causes the smooth muscles of the gallbladder to release what we call the bile, and it will come through this same cystic duct, yes, joining with common hepatic duct to form what we call the common bile duct. And of course we know that common bile joins what we call the, I mean, the major pancreatic duct of Wesson, yes, at the ampulla of Beta, to open, okay, into what we call the second duodenal papilla, to open into what we call the second part of the duodenum at what we call the major duodenal papilla. So that is, I mean, how the bile will flow, okay, opposite to where blood is flowing. The blood is supplying these hepatocytes from peripheral to central, while Bile is drained from the liver from central to peripheral. Okay, that is what I want you to know. Now, so I was talking about the periportal space. Okay, the periportal space. So we have the portal triad, which of course we mentioned. Okay, and this periportal space, okay, that potential space, okay, that we find, okay, around the portal triad. Okay, that one was surrounded, of course, the vessels, okay, by way of, you know, the interlobular branches of hepatic, you know, portal vein, as well as, you know, hepatic artery proper, as well as, of course, you know, the bile, you know, duct. Okay, so that is, I mean, what we are going to see. Now remember, an important thing that we want to tell you over here is that this area is thought to be the site, okay, in the liver where lymph actually originates. And this is because there are some lymphatic vessels, okay, which of course we find also around this area. Okay, so that is what I want you to know, at the periphery of the hepatic lobes. So that's what, I mean, you have to know here. So as I was saying, yes, we've looked at the classic lobule of the liver. Now how the bile, okay, drains into what we call the, I mean, the drains into the portal area, actually from the central aspect to the periphery into what we call interlobular hepatic bile ducts. Okay, that one represent what we call the portal lobule of the liver. Okay, so in the portal lobule of the liver, I told you that we have hepatocytes, and in between adjacent hepatocytes there's that potential little space that is what we call bile canaliculi. But eventually they are draining, getting into what we call the canals of Henle, and from canals of Henle into what we call interlobular hepatic bile ducts. Interlobular hepatic bile ducts, these are here. So I've already told you the pathway. Okay, that is how it goes. Okay, so from central to peripheral. However, in the case of drainage, then what will happen, I mean, blood draining in there by way of the classic lobule, then it is going from what we call, I mean, peripheral to central, all the way into the central vein. Now, one thing I want to show you about this canal of Henle, which is important, is that this canal of Henle, okay, is endowed with what we call contractile ability. And because it's endowed with contractile ability, it helps to eject that kind of bile into the interlobular hepatic bile duct. And that is why, I mean, if these canals of Henle, they get destroyed, okay, whatsoever means, if through some injurious agent or what have you, it get destroyed, then it may lead to what we call intrahepatic cholestasis. Okay, so intrahepatic cholestasis is likely going to happen if there's injury to these canals of Henle. Why? Because they have contractile ability to help eject this bile into the interlobular hepatic bile duct. Okay, so that is, I mean, what we call, I mean, around these portal triad that we find over here. We said there's this potential space, okay, between, of course, these hepatocytes that we have over here, and of course, I mean, this area. And that is why this potential space is known as, I mean, periportal space, because those structures are in the portal area. But of course, it's also having an eponym known as space of Moll. Okay, so that is what you have to know. So to bring this whole class to a close, then one thing I want to show you is the lobular system. Now we want to really look at the lobular system. You've seen them, but I want to quickly run through them. One of them is the classic hepatic lobule. So that's the first classification. That is actually anatomical, having this hexagonal shape structure, such that each of these lobule of the liver is hexagonal in shape, and this is hexagonal in shape, bearing what we call a central, I mean, vein. Okay, so this is having a central vein. And of course, at the periphery, okay, at the ends of these sides of these, I mean, hexagonal shape structure, we are going to have the portal area, bearing the portal triad that we are talking about. And of course, radiating from the central vein or towards the central vein, we have plates, okay, of hepatocytes. We have plates of hepatocytes. So that is what we call the classic lobule of the liver. And the classic lobule of the liver is telling us how, you know, blood by way of, I mean, nutrient rich, okay, and oxygen rich blood, okay, they are getting drained, okay, into, I mean, the central vein, of course, by getting mixed in what we call the sinusoids of the liver. Because I told you that in between the plates of hepatocytes, okay, run over there, we have this kind of discontinuous capillaries known as hepatocytes. That is what we call the classic lobule. Now, if I'm having, you know, about three, you know, for instance, I'm having three, I mean, classic lobules, okay, classic hepatic lobules, then I take an imaginary line, okay, all the way from here, connecting the, I mean, those central veins that I'm having. Then it means that at the center, I'm going to have what we call the portal area. One of the portal areas will be captured in the center. Okay, the portal area will be captured in the center. And one thing that I want you to know is that yes, we are draining bile actually from what we call central to peripheral. Okay, so the peripheral structure that we found will be in the center. If I have these three structures from the central veins, take this kind of imaginary to get this triangle, then at the center I have what we call the portal area. This lobule, that imaginary connection that we've imagined over here, represent how bile, okay, is drained from the source. And by way of the source, okay, I want to say that it is coming from central, from the hepatocytes, okay, all the way going into what we call the bile canalicular canals of Henry, interlobular, hepatic, eventually into what we call interlobular hepatic bile ducts. That is what I'm trying to say. So from central to peripheral, okay, from either side, from all these lobules, okay, into this area. Okay, so that is, one thing I want you to know. And one thing that you realize is that it tells you that because blood is moving from the bile is moving from central to peripheral, okay, it goes opposite to that of the classic lobule, how the liver is drained of blood. Okay, so that is what you have to know. Now the next one that we talk about is what we call the liver is sinus. Liver is sinus, and it's having an eponym, okay, that is a sinus of Rappaport. Okay, so that is what we find. And that one, what you have to do, just locate any two classic hepatic lobules, okay, just any two, and then using that kind of imaginary connection again from the central veins, okay, but this time we're touching what we call the adjacent, okay, the neighboring what we call portal area. So this way, okay, towards the side and then towards the side, okay, touching the adjacent portal areas. So that what will happen is that if I take just one of these ones, okay, just one side of this structure that I've produced over here, then I will have what you call 1, 2 and 3. Now 1 is the most peripheral zone, then 2 is the intermediate or the transitional zone, and then 3 is the most central placed zone. So number 3 is the one where is very close to what we call the central veins. Okay, now if we are saying that now those one, number 1, okay, where is very peripheral, okay, it's very towards the outside, and that is why we call it the peripheral zone. That's zone 1. Okay, now zone 1 is going to receive the greatest nourishment. Why? Because it's very close to these portal areas, and because it's very close to these portal areas, then that oxygen rich blood coming from that interlobular branch of hepatic artery proper is going to receive most of it. Okay, similarly those ones in peripheral zone 1 over here, they will receive most of it. Okay, then by the time it gets here, that concentration of that oxygen rich blood would have reduced, the oxygen in it would have reduced. So it means that those in zone 2, okay, they are what we call the intermediate zone or the transitional zone. Okay, they will have moderate nourishment by way of the oxygen rich blood. And then those in zone 3, which is very close to the central vein, because at the end of the day, everything is going to drain into the central vein. So by the time it gets into the central vein, because from the central vein it is going to what we call the hepatic veins, and then from hepatic veins you go to what we call inferior vena cava, getting into the right atrium of the heart, eventually going for nourishment from the lungs. Okay, so it means getting oxygen from the lungs. So it means that that blood, as we get towards the central vein, it is becoming more deoxygenated. Okay, the oxygen level will be going down, and therefore cells over here towards the central aspect, which of course we call them the pericentral zone, those cells over here constitute the pericentral zone. That over here means that those ones are the least supplied as far as the oxygen rich blood is concerned. Okay, so it tells you that those cells which will be very metabolically very active will be those ones in in the peripheral zone actually, or the periportal zone, okay, around the portal area, followed by those in the zone 2, and then zone 3 will be the most suffocated ones, and therefore they will be less metabolically active. Now, although we're talking about this advantage for those in the peripheral zone or the periportal zone, one thing is that it also comes with a disadvantage. Say that if there's any injury, okay, there's any injurious agent, some poison in the blood, then what happens is that these ones will get the highest concentration before it gets into those in the pericentral zone. So that is what we call the lobular system of what we call the liver. I'm very grateful for your time this evening. I hope you find it helpful. We will be looking at other important things regarding your anatomy. So please, if you've not subscribed to the channel, please do so that in future exciting videos, yes, you'll not be missed out. I'm very grateful for your time this evening. Have a good night, and may the Lord richly bless you.